Hello everybody. Welcome back. Today is Thursday. Thursday the 25th of February. Can you believe that? February just came and went. I have missed y'all so much. Thank y'all so much for all your support through last week. I really missed you. I almost came live, but we spent the week with our family, which was much needed time. But thank you all so much for your understanding and your support. And yes, I love you so much. Today we're starting a new series. We're going to do 3 videos in this series. So today, next Thursday, and the following Thursday are all going to be part of this Rag Quilt series. Y'all, we're going to make a wall size rag quilt, a little bit non-traditional way. So stay tuned. I'm going to show you what I mean. And if you want the free pattern for this, it is in the description box below. You can grab that. And we have a chat topic today. I was looking at these cards. Harlan's parents gave me these for Christmas. And I thought, let's go back and start doing what we did during the traditional at-home block series. And let's ask a topic during the day to have something to chat about during the quiet times, right? But I didn't realize that these table topics is the couples edition. It's the couples edition. But I'm going to try to translate them to where it makes sense for us just friends answering these topics. So today's chat topic is, what does your partner or your friends do that make you laugh the hardest? That's today's chat topic, y'all. Hello, everybody. I'm so glad y'all are coming on in. Coming on in. I'm going to switch the screen here in a second. I want to give everybody a time to get notified. Come on in and join the chat. If you're watching this on the replay, feel free to skip around or just hang out with us while we're chatting if you want to. I know not everybody likes that, but a lot of us do. I'm so glad y'all are here with me. I am going to give you some numbers here in a second. So if you have a pen and a piece of paper close by, I'm going to give you some numbers on how to take this wall size quilt and make it bigger. When you see those numbers, you're going to be like, oh, glory. No, I'm just making the wall size with you, Lisa, because it's a lot of pieces. But I'm going to give you those numbers. If you want to write them down, you have a second, grab a piece of paper and a pen. Hello, everybody. I'm so glad you're here. Come on in. Come on in. Thank you, Beverly. We got this shirt at South of the Border when we went to South Carolina. Hazel says the sound is vibrating. Is it vibrating on y'all's end? It might be my internet. I don't know. I can't tell from my side. Before we jump in and get started, how's the sound on your end? The sun is out, y'all. Sounds good. Sounds fine. Sounds good. Okay, Miss Hazel, try leaving. Close down YouTube and come back in and see if that fixes it. Y'all hear the motorcycle? My neighbor, whenever the weather breaks and it's nice, he goes out for rides on his motorcycle. So y'all might hear that in the background. Thank you so much. Miss Hazel, try going out and coming back in. Now I'm going to pull up on the screen some numbers, okay? In the description box is a 2-page PDF. You can print that off. It looks like this. And this PDF is going to give you the measurements that we're making in this series. It's a wall quilt that measures 36 inches by 36 inches. It's square. It's the perfect size for a wall in my camper. Okay, so that's what I'm making, 36 by 36. If you want to do something different, I'm going to pull these numbers on the screen and leave them there for a second so that you can write them down if you want to make this quilt bigger. That's a lot of numbers. That's a lot of squares. So a typical crib size quilt, 40 by 52. You need 130 pieces for the top and 130 for the back. That's a total of 260 squares. and it goes up from there. Twin size, you need 792. Full size, you're going to need 968. And a queen size, if you want to venture that big, you're going to need 1,056 5-inch squares. That is a lot. It is a lot. Now I'm making mine with charms. Well, actually, I'll show you here in a second. I'm using 2 charms for the front, and I cut my 5-inch squares for the back out of some scraps. So you could mix it up if you want. It's 5-inch squares, so if you have a bunch of charm packs laying around, you could use those. Great for charm packs. But I'm using a mixture of charm packs, and I cut some squares out of yardage. I say yardage very loosely. It originally came from yardage, a bolt of fabric, but it's scraps in my stash. Oh, Katrina, I am so sorry to hear that you're at the hospital with your mom. Oh, we'll be praying. Hopefully it's for something routine and simple, but I'm praying for your mom. Just know that we are doing that, and I hope you keep us updated. Catherine says, that's a whole lot of cutting, right? That's why I'm doing the smaller version. But y'all, I wanted to give you these numbers because I know inevitably someone's going to ask, how many squares would I need if I want to make a twin size? So I just did the math, and it's on the screen if you want to venture to go larger. Yeah, Hazel said, great for using up the scraps. It is. It really is, Hazel. It really is. Now I'm going to switch the screen before we get started. I'll take this off. If y'all need to see that again, let me know and I'll bring it up again, okay? Let's switch the screen because I want to show y'all something. If you are in the Creative Squad over in Patreon and you missed this workshop this past weekend, you can still watch it. So it is recorded. You can go over to Patreon. You can pull it up. You can print off the PDFs and you can still follow along with me. It's just not live, but you can watch the replay if you're on Patreon and you missed it. This was so much fun, y'all. We did 3 different exercises, straight lines and small curves. We did curves and traveling. I remembered the word for it this week, traveling. And then we did a flower and we filled in with different quilting fills. So if you're on Patreon and you have missed this class, it's recorded. When we're done here in the live or when you have a chance, you can go watch it over there. Okay, that was a lot of fun. That was so much fun. Let me bring over this PDF one more time. This is what the PDF looks like, y'all. Let me just make sure I'm not missing any comments. Patricia says, I've been watching your channel since I started sewing in September. Oh, it's your first time live, Patricia. I'm so glad you're here. I hope you come back. Hello in Houston. Angel, I'm keeping you company while you clean and pack. It's so great to see y'all. Oh, Miss Katrina. Okay, we're going to be praying for your mom, praying for her doctors and nurses, praying for you and your family. Lord, we need a quick healing there. So yes, that's what we're praying for. All right, if y'all have questions for me, if you type them in all caps, it makes it super easy for me to hopefully not miss it in the chat because the chat does go by pretty fast sometimes. And if I miss your question, please repeat it because I don't mean to miss stuff, but it happens all the time. Okay, this is the PDF for this rag quilt that we're doing, y'all. And this is not your typical rag quilt. Okay, when I say typical or traditional rag quilt, and many of y'all have made rag quilts before, I've made 3 of them. Usually with a rag quilt, you take your 3 layers, right? You take your top, your batting, and your backing, and you sew or quilt an X from corner to corner to keep those layers together. That's a traditional rag quilt. That's the quilting in a rag quilt, right? Traditionally. We're going to change it up and do something a little bit different with this quilt, so bear with me. Because I love applique. We're going to change it up a little bit. So let's go over the things that you need to make this particular size quilt 36 by 36 inches. You're going to need a total of 81 5-inch squares for the top. I'm using charm packs for my top, so you'll need 2 charms if you're going to pull some charm packs out of your stash. 2 charm packs, you're going to have a couple left over, right? Because you only need 81 for the top, and you need 81 5-inch squares for the back of your quilt. So you're going to want to cut all those. 81 for the front and 81 for the back. Or 2 charms for the front, 2 charms for the back. That would be the simplest way to do this. You're going to need some batting. And if you're going to go to the store and buy some batting, a crib size batting would work perfectly for this quilt. You're even going to have a little bit left over, right? To put in your batting stash. I like using a thin 80-20 batting or a cotton batting. It's pretty thin. See how thin that is? But if you are buying batting for this quilt, grab a crib size. You're going to have some of that left over. And because we're doing applique with this rag quilt, you're going to need about 3/4 of a yard of applique fabric. Y'all, we're going to applique a heart in the center of our blocks, just like this. So instead of quilting from corner to corner, we're going to applique the heart in the center, and that's going to quilt our 3 layers and keep these pieces together while we are assembling our quilt. So this week we're going to focus on the applique portion of our blocks. You're going to have a week to do all of that. Next week we're going to assemble our rows. So we're going to be making, I think, 9 rows altogether. And then the week after that, we're sewing our rows together and snipping all of our seams. And our quilt will be finished besides throwing it in the wash. Right? And when we talk about throwing it in the wash, I had a question about that. And I wanted to throw that out there for y'all. Let me go back for a second. I thought that I brought her question over. So I am so sorry. I didn't do that. When I initially talked about doing the Rag Quilt series, I had a question. I had copy and pasted it, but I don't see it here. So I'm so sorry I forgot your name. For those of you who have made rag quilts before, then you know after you snip all the seams and you throw it in the wash a couple times, it creates quite havoc in your washer and your dryer. And besides just, several times through those processes, cleaning out the dryer screen, besides doing that so many times, do y'all have any tips for ways to make it less messy when washing and drying a rag quilt? If you have ideas of ways for it to not be so labor intensive when you're washing and cleaning all that little pieces out, we would love to hear your tips. And again, I thought that I brought that message over, but I don't see it. I'm so sorry. Judith says she uses flannel in the middle. Yes, flannel works too. Flannel works too. I'm so disappointed. I thought I had brought over that question. Okay, so you need 3/4 of a yard of fabric to do your hearts on all your blocks. Okay, the second page of this PDF, and it goes through the instructions, but I'm going to walk you through in these 3 videos how to put this quilt together. The second page is kind of like a cheat sheet. Okay, I'm going to show you that here in just a second. You're going to want to cut that out right on the line, just like this. And then your little heart applique template down here. Yvonne said, can you do the washing and drying at the laundromat? You could, but being a nice neighbor at the laundromat, you're going to want to still clean out all of those. You're going to want to wipe the drum out of the washer and certainly clean out the vents in the inside of the dryer the first couple of times you wash this quilt. I know I washed the biggest rag quilt that I did. I ended up giving to my daughter Bailey and her husband Austin. I washed that quilt 5 times before I gave it to them because it just kept on shedding and making a mess. It eventually stops, but it makes a mess. So if you take it to the laundromat, make sure you still clean out the machines before you leave. All right, so there's your heart applique. And y'all, you know I love raw edge applique, and there's really 2 ways that I love to do raw edge applique, and one is with fusibles like Heat and Ball Light, and another one is with freezer paper. And I'm all about doing quilts and quilting projects on a budget. So for this quilt, I'm using freezer paper. Okay, so you're going to want to trace a whole bunch of these hearts either on a fusible or on freezer paper. So that's what I've done just to save some time. This is freezer paper. And if you've never heard of freezer paper before, this is what the box looks like. You can find it at most grocery stores, Walmart, places like that. And it's in the same aisle as your saran wrap and aluminum foil. Usually mine is on the lowest bottom shelf. So look there, but this is what freezer paper looks like, the box of it, and what it is and why it's different from parchment paper is because on one side there's a plastic coating. See that shiny? That's the plastic coating, and one side is a dull paper. There's no coating on that side. So that's the side you actually trace on, the dull side. The plastic coating adheres to the front pretty side of your applique fabric, and then it comes right off. But it's a really cost-effective way of doing a whole bunch of applique, and so that's what I'm using, and I'm going to walk you through those steps. Hello, everybody. Hello, hello, hello. Let me go back. Is the applique fabric felt, or what do you use? Jill, I am using, this is just quilter's cotton from Joann's, I believe. That's where this one came from. It's just a black solid. It is cotton. You could use felt if you wanted to, or fleece, or yeah, I don't really have any rules. You could use whatever you wanted for the applique, right? But this one is a cotton. It's so great y'all are hanging out with me. Could you use parchment paper? Miss Cheryl, parchment paper does not have that plastic coating. If you look at parchment paper, both sides are dull, right? Both sides look exactly the same, and it will not stick to your fabric like freezer paper does. Parchment paper is great to use as a to cover your work when pressing. So maybe you don't want to get adhesive or glues on your iron. It's great for a pressing cloth, but it will not stick to your fabric. Sue said, won't felt disintegrate in the wash? I'm not sure, Sue. I've never worked with felt, so I don't know. All righty. You could just use any of your fusibles too, like Heat and Bond Light, Wonder Under. But this saves you lots of money, and so that's what I'm using for my quilt. Let me heat up this iron for a second. She's been sleeping. And y'all, I'm using 2 charm packs for the front. And I already know at some point I'm going to get asked, what line charm packs are you using? Who are they by? And so I kept the names of them so that if you want to look these up, if you fall in love with these fabrics, you want to look them up, you know the names to look for. Baby Jane and Boutique. They are Moda fabrics, so you can search those. That's the name of the 2 charm packs I'm using. I wanted to make sure I shared that as well. So what I'm going to do today is really focus on the very first row, okay? And I'm going to give y'all some homework throughout the week to finish everything up. So each row of our quilt is going to have 9 blocks going across. So for the first row, you're going to need 9 front fabrics and 9 back fabrics. Again, these are 5-inch squares, 5 inch by 5 inch. And you're going to need 9 pieces of batting. But your batting, you do not want to cut at 5 inches. You want to cut it at 4 inches by 4 inches. And it just goes in the middle just like that. See that? 4 inches by 4 inches. You need 9 of those for the first row. And all of these steps you're going to repeat for 9 more rows, right? So I have my 9 front fabrics, my 9 back fabrics. I have my applique fabric. Here we go. I'm going to lay all this out like that. And I have traced out 9 of these hearts, okay? So while my iron is heating up, I'm just going to cut these hearts apart, okay? Because that's going to make it easier for me. I'm not cutting them right out on the line. Just cutting them like this. Like that. This. And not like that. I want to thank my moderators today. Thank y'all so much. Makes it a lot less stressful for me trying to keep up with everything. I want to move my little pressing board right over here like this so that you can see. There we go. Now with your iron heating up, when I use freezer paper, I like to use the highest cotton setting that I have on my iron and no steam. And this is going to be hard to see because I'm using a solid. So it's hard to see which side is the pretty side and which side is not the pretty side. You're going to want to lay the pretty side facing up. Okay? It would be like this. Pretty side, not pretty side. When you do freezer paper applique, I like to fuse my pieces to the pretty side. Once your iron is heated up, you're going to take the shiny side of your freezer paper, lay it down on your fabric, and just press until that sticks right there. Like that. And it's just going to stick there while you work with it. Like that. See, we'll do 4 together. How about that? Just like that. Sometimes it takes a few seconds for it to actually really fuse to that fabric, especially when your iron has been sleeping for about 2 hours. But your goal is for it to just stick to the fabric so that you can work with the fabric and cut out that heart shape directly on the line. I'm trying not to waste too much of this black fabric, but we're just going to do these 4 together like this. And you get saved for later. Once it cools off, you're actually able to go in and cut each one of these heart shapes out right on the line. Just like this, cutting it out right on the line. Freezer paper applique is one of my most favorite methods of applique. Like I said, I like to work on my projects, and I like to do them on a budget, or, you know, I like to save my money for fabric. So anytime I'm doing lots and lots of applique, I will use freezer paper. And another reason I love using freezer paper for applique is because when we're done and we wash this quilt, the applique portions of this quilt is going to be so soft. Heat and Bond Light is just like the name suggests. It's a light fusible adhesive, but you can still sometimes feel it's not super stiff, but you can tell it's in there, right? Freezer paper applique is just like you've used nothing at all. And I kind of really like that a lot. So we're keeping that freezer paper on our fabric. Don't take it off yet. Give me just a second because I'm a slow cutter. So while I'm cutting these out, maybe we can talk about that chat topic for a second. What does your partner or your friends do that makes you laugh the hardest? I would say it would be hard to pick one thing that Harlan does that makes me laugh the hardest, because ordinarily he's just a funny guy, and so everything he does, we just have a way of like making each other laugh a lot. And most of the time, y'all, it's dumb stuff that we laugh at, but it's funny to us, right? What does your partner or your friends do that make you laugh the hardest? One of the things that Harlan does that makes me laugh every time is he uses the word apparently a lot. Almost every time we talk, he'll use the word apparently. And it reminds me, I don't know if y'all saw the little kid on the news a couple years ago. He's on YouTube. If you search apparently kid, you'll see him come up. And he's talking to the news broadcaster, and he's like, apparently I did this, and apparently I did that. Well, Harlan says apparently a lot. And so every time he says apparently, I think of the little kid. And it's just funny to me. I don't know why it's so funny. It's kind of silly, but it's hilarious for me. Can you draw on freezer paper with the Scan and Cut? Yes, you can, Anitra. Absolutely. The Scan and Cut has the little, it comes with the little markers. So you can just put those in your standard little holder that comes with the Scan and Cut. And you can have it cut out or have it draw out a ton of hearts for you. You could cut your freezer paper 12 by 12 and put it on your mat and have it draw those hearts out for you. I would wait on cutting out your hearts until your freezer paper is fused to your fabric, because see how nice that cut is? So yeah, but you could have it draw right on your freezer paper. I believe you can also print on freezer paper if you have an inkjet printer, not a laser printer, because a laser printer uses heat to dry that toner. But if you have an inkjet printer, you can also print on freezer paper. Cheryl said, can you use foundation paper? I'm not quite sure, Miss Cheryl, what you mean by foundation paper. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that? I'm not quite sure. When I think of foundation paper, I think of phone book pages. So that's why I'm not quite sure what you think when you say foundation paper. Again, the reason I'm using freezer paper is because it has that plastic coating. Without that plastic coating on it, y'all, it doesn't stick to the fabric. See that? It's sticking to that fabric. All right, so we're going to do 4 of these hearts together. I think that's going to give us a really good idea of what we're doing. And so if you're making this quilt, you'll know what you're doing as you move along through your homework for the week. All right, so and then the second part of the second page is this. And you know, you don't really need to use this if you're great at eyeballing your placement for your heart. This is just a shortcut that I use so that the heart is in the same place on every single one of your blocks. I need a template guide, but if you can just eyeball it or you want it to be a little bit different on each one of your blocks, then you don't really need this, right? But I'm going to show you how I use it because I wanted all of my blocks lined up exactly the same all the way through my quilt. Oh, Miss Cheryl, I see. I guess you could use interfacing if you can draw on your interfacing the hearts. But I'm going to show you why I use freezer paper here in just a second. And Sheila said, can't you reuse those freezer paper hearts a few times? You can. You absolutely can. I'll show you why I don't in a little bit. Remind me to show you why I don't. In freezer paper, y'all, you get like a huge roll for like $8 or $9 at Walmart. That roll is going to last you forever. You're going to do so much with one roll. I know tracing a bunch of hearts is a pain in the 2D and time consuming, but I'm going to show you why I don't reuse this heart. And it might just be me, but when you trace the heart on the freezer paper, and then you cut it out, it's going to stabilize all that fabric around it, just like you saw me cutting that piece out. When you remove this little paper and you put it on a piece of fabric, I have a hard time going around that paper part. Okay, and I'll demonstrate that for you, but that's just me. You can reuse them if you want. We're all different. And for you, it might not be that difficult. For me, it is. You should be able to find freezer paper, if not the Reynolds brand, like a store brand, at most grocery stores. All right. So now the real fun begins. I'm going to move this out of the way so it's not distracting. For this part, y'all, I'm going to be using an Elmer's clear washable glue stick. You can also use a wet glue like Elmer's Glue All, Elmer's School Glue, something that's going to wash out of your quilt when you're done, right? For this one, I'm just going to use the clear Elmer's glue stick. We're jumping right in. I'm going to take one of my back fabrics. I'm going to lay that pretty side facing down like this. I'm going to take this glue stick. I'm going to mark some glue right in the center. I'm going to take this batting square and lay it right in the middle like this. You should have about a ½ inch all the way around, just like that. We're going to lay that right there. We're going to take our top square with the pretty side facing up. I'm going to take my little template and just lay it just like this. It gives me the perfect little shortcut for finding the center of that 5-inch square. And then we're going to take our heart. We're going to take some glue stick. And on the fabric, it's going to apply a little bit of glue stick all the way around, just like that. I'm going to line up that heart right in the middle. And I'm going to dry that glue with a good hot iron, and that just takes a second. Like that. And then this little heart. Ooh, that's hot. Let it cool off a second. The paper peels right off, just like that. If you want to reuse these, you can save them. So there's the perfect placement for your heart. We're going to flip that over. I'm going to add some glue, just like this. Now that glue is just going to temporarily base these pieces. And it's going to wash out of this quilt once we wash it, right? But it's going to temporarily hold these pieces in place as we stitch down that applique. So now we're just lining up the front and the back fabric. I'm going to dry that glue, and that just takes a second. Dry the front and dry the back. And you're going to repeat this same process through all of your blocks, right? Which, if you're like me, I like to keep it real with you. It's really fun for about the first 12 or so blocks. Oh, it's so much fun. After that, it becomes work and you get bored real quick if you're like me, but keep on going. And that's the process. So I'm just going to repeat that a couple more times. And then we're going to sew down this applique together. So there's, whoops, I almost messed up. Here's my back fabric. I'm going to lay that pretty side down. I'm going to put a little bit of glue stick right in the middle. I'm going to lay that batting square right in the middle, like that. We're going to bring in this top fabric. Let's scoop this up some. There you go. There's the top fabric. Here's my stencil. Line that up. We're going to grab another fabric heart. We're going to apply a little bit of glue right on the back, like that. Line it right up inside that heart and dry the glue. Vicky said, asked about using it with heat and bond. Yeah, heat and bond, it gets fused to the back side of your fabric and not the pretty side. And if you're using heat and bond, you'll take off the paper backing once you cut out your heart and then center it in that template. Yes. So freezer paper gets adhered to the pretty side, and heat and bond gets fused to the back side of your fabric. We're going to apply a little bit of glue like this. Line up those pieces like that and dry the glue. We're drying this glue with a good hot iron, which means when I bring this over to the sewing machine here in just a second, I don't have to worry about the glue gumming up my needle or messing with my machine, right? Everything's nice and dry. There's my back fabric. You can make a little production line, have all of your pieces cut, and then just spend an afternoon doing this part. That's what I've done. I already have like 3/4 of this quilt made. Can't see it. It's down there below the table, but yeah, this is what I did. I just cut out all of my pieces and just sat here and did this over and over and over again, like a little production line. And the top fabric, the stencil, and glue it right down in place. So you could just eyeball it if you're good at doing that, but it's good to know your strong points and your weak points, and eyeballing anything I'm not good at. So if using a little shortcut like a stencil to line something up helps me a lot. And we're gluing. Like that, line it up and dry the glue. Sherry asked, do you stitch the heart down? Yep, that's exactly what we're doing next. As we're stitching that little heart down. Now, here's the thing. If you don't want to stitch the little heart down, you could use Heat and Bond in the red package. That's Heat and Bond Ultra and it's permanent. That's going to save you a lot of time. However, because of the nature of this quilt being a rag quilt, we kind of need something to hold these pieces together, right? So instead of doing the little X all the way through, we are doing the heart that is appliqued and stitched down in the center. And this is the last one we're going to do together. Now the cool thing about it is that you could use any stitch you wanted, right? I've used a zigzag stitch, which is a little time consuming. You could use a satin stitch, which is even more time consuming. Or you could use a free motion foot and do a straight stitch, right? The nature of this quilt having ragged edges or ragged seams, I think it would be okay that your little hearts fray along the edges. So you could use a straight stitch, and that's a little bit faster than doing a zigzag stitch or a satin stitch, or even a blanket stitch, which has been my favorite here lately, the blanket stitch. Any of those stitches would work. It just peels off like that. And there's some glue. Yay, Cheryl, you found your applique stitch. Yeah, each machine calls it something different, don't they? Doris, I love the liquid school glue as well. You could use either one. For this quilt, I have an abundance of school glue sticks. I ordered a box of them on Amazon because I switched from the purple glue stick to the clear one. When I ordered that box, it came with 30 of these. 30 of these glue sticks for like $6. So I'm using the glue sticks, but you can use wet glue, and I love that method as well. All right, so I'm going to let these cool off for just a second before we switch over to the sewing machine. And while those are cooling off, I'm going to show you why I just trace all of my hearts and I don't reuse these. Now, we're all different. If it's easy for you to reuse these, then by all means, save yourself some time and reuse them, and don't trace out 81 little hearts. That's a lot, right? But I'm going to show you why I don't reuse them. And for that, I'm going to grab this fabric again. Just cut myself off a little piece. It's actually a really good question because I've done a few videos about freezer paper and raw edge applique, and that question comes up a lot. It's kind of difficult to answer that question because I think most certainly you can reuse them, but it's hard to type out the reasons why I personally don't. Lucy said, why not just use Steam-A-Seam instead of glue? You can use Steam-A-Seam. By all means, if that is what is easiest and works best for you, you can. One of the reasons why I use freezer paper when I do projects like this, where I'm cutting out a lot of pieces, is because freezer paper is way more cost effective when doing applique. And when I wash this quilt, there's going to be no stiffness, no adhesive left, right? Because that glue is going to wash out. The only thing holding this heart on will be the stitches that we do here in just a second. So it's going to feel just like fat, you know, there's no adhesives left behind. It's just a different method. You can use heat and bond, steam a seam to do your hearts if you want. All right, so I'm going to take one of these hearts that I haven't cut out yet. And I'm going to iron that to the fabric like that. I think when I do this, I move my camera. I'm so sorry. And we're going to reuse one of the hearts that I've previously just used, right? It still sticks. You can use it over and over again. Eventually, it'll get so linty that it doesn't stick anymore. But you can reuse it several times. All right, so we're going to let that cool off for a second. I'm going to separate these two pieces. So when you are cutting it out initially like this freezer paper is actually stabilizing the fabric around it as well. So when I'm cutting, I get a nice, pretty cut all the way around. Right? And I can cut directly on that line. So typically, if I can stay on the line, if my hands aren't shaking too bad, all of my hearts look exactly the same. And I can be way more precise. And that extra freezer paper is helping stabilize that fabric as I cut, right? So there's my heart. Now when I reuse that heart over again, now you're cutting on fabric that kind of just wants to fold over that edge, right? So you most certainly can. But I have to be so much more precise, just like this. Some fabrics are easier than others. Some of them are more thick, you know, and some of them are a little bit more slinkier. But I have to be really careful and stay right close to that paper edge. Sometimes, see how it wants to buckle like that? Sometimes I accidentally cut into my heart. That's just my hands shake, y'all. So sometimes I do that. And it's easier for me to do that if the fabric is not supported. See that? I have a little bit of a hard time and I struggle. So I'm not saying you can't. I'm just saying for me, it's a lot easier just to cut it out once and let it go. So there you go. You can do it, but I have a much more precise time not doing it. Can you see that? This is the one I cut out first, and that's the second. So you could do it either way. All right, so I think my hearts are cooled off. Yep, the glue is dry. At this point, once you do this for each one of your blocks, we're going to stitch these down, right? So today, for this quilt, actually, all the way through, I'm using a zigzag stitch. Let me switch you over. And I wrote it down on a note card so I don't forget, because I haven't been doing all of this quilt all at one shot. I've been working on it here and there, and I don't want to forget the settings that I've used to stitch these hearts down. So for me, I'm using a zigzag stitch, which for me is a setting number 4 on my machine with a width of 2.6. So let me lower that. And for the length of my zigzag stitch, I went with a 1.0. Now, y'all, all of these settings are going to be different for your machine or the way that you want it to look, right? So experiment on some scraps until you get a setting that you like, and then write it down and keep this with your quilt as you're working on it so that you use the same stitch on all of your hearts all the way through your quilt. Okay? I have some black thread in both my top and bobbin area. So you're not really going to see too much of the stitching, and I apologize about that, but I wanted my stitching on this quilt to blend in with the applique and to blend in with my background fabric, right? So you're just going to see the quilting texture, but the thread really isn't the focus of this quilt. So my thread is going to blend in, and you're going to simply stitch down your applique. Again, you don't have to use a zigzag stitch. You can use any of the stitches in your machine that you want to use. But for me, I've chosen the handy dandy zigzag stitch. Let me see if I can switch the feet so you might be able to see a little bit more of what I'm doing. Let's try this foot. You might get to see more. And one thing, when I'm facing over here, I don't get to see your comments. So if you have a question, hold on to it for a second. I'm going to stitch down 2 of these hearts with you so you get the idea, but most of you already know what I'm doing. But I do have lots of new people on my channel all the time, so I want them to see this part. We're going to lower the needle right next to the heart. And I'm doing a zigzag stitch. And this seems simple enough, right? Like I said, when you're doing the first 9, 10, or 12 of these blocks, oh, it's so much fun. When you're doing 81 of them, it becomes a little tedious. So if you're someone who gets bored really quickly doing a lot of the same thing over and over again, use a stitch to sew down your applique that goes by fast. Okay, if you're like me and you get bored pretty quick, use a stitch that goes really quick. It's certainly simple sewing. And if you're someone who likes to watch TV or listen to audiobooks while you're sewing, maybe you like to listen to music and sewing is your therapy time, then you're going to love this because you don't have to think so much about it. You're just doing it over and over and over again. Now I know you can see the little glue stick that's come through the top of my black fabric. See that? All of that's going to wash out the first time we wash our quilt. The black fabric that I used to do my applique was not the highest of quality of black fabrics, so it's on the thinner side. So my glue is coming through to the front of my fabric, but it's okay. As soon as we throw this quilt in the wash, all of that's going to wash right out. We're going to stitch one more heart together. Just like this. Cut this little string. And coming back, we're almost done with this one. And there we go. So you get the idea. We're stitching them down. That's the process. And that's about, I didn't go extra fast to get through it really quick. And I didn't go extra slow so that you could see great detail of the sewing, right? That's the average time it takes me to do the zigzag stitch for each one of the hearts. So you get an idea of the length of time it's going to take you to do each one of the blocks. Now, granted, you might be a little slower than I am, and you might be a lot faster than I am. But that's an average of how long it takes to sew down each one of the blocks, and I wanted you to see that. So what that's done is it's quilted our 3 layers. We have a little heart quilted shape on the back side of each one of our blocks. And now that applique fabric is permanently bonded to our quilts, and the 3 layers are quilted together. So instead of doing the traditional X through our rag quilt blocks, that's what we're doing for this. Now, if you don't want to do the hearts and you just want to do this and you're making a rag quilt along with us, by all means do that. This is your quilt. I don't like setting rules with quilts. I don't like telling you what you have to do, what you can't do. It's your quilt. If you want to forego the hearts because of all the extra time involved, by all means, just do the squares and follow along with us. It would still be super cute. Miss Juanita, when I lower my needle and I am getting ready to start stitching, doing a zigzag stitch, I lower my needle in the background fabric right next to the edge of the heart. So when it starts stitching, it'll stitch into the heart and then back into the background, right next to the edge of the heart. I hope that's helpful. Nora said, "What a contrasting color thread looked nice." It would, Nora. Now I wanted my stitching to blend in because I knew. Here's the thing. I knew I was going to try to go as quick as possible, and that I would get bored stitching 81 hearts. That's just the truth. I get bored really quick. I knew I would try to go by and stitch them as fast as possible, which means my stitches might be a little wonky. So I wanted my stitches to blend in, and so that you don't really see them from the front. You can't see my mistakes because my thread blends in. Now, if you want to take your time, or you just want the stitches to be an accent to your quilt, then a contrasting thread would look gorgeous. Don't you think a red thread on this would look beautiful? I think it would. But I knew I was going to go too fast. My stitches are going to be a little wonky, and I just wanted it to blend in. Thank you so much, Miss Diane. Thank you so much for moderating today. Hello, Sherry. Thanks for moderating. Oh yeah, Sherry has a great reminder. I do have a couple of videos that explain doing a satin stitch, some tips on that. You could apply that to a zigzag stitch as well because it's kind of the same stitch, only spread out further apart, right? Evelyn, if you, with your machine, if using a walking foot makes this process easier, then by all means use your walking foot. I particularly don't like using the walking foot. I don't know why. But for some of you, it might be easier. Now, let me just say that because we've used a super thin 80-20 batting, that's going to help you if you don't want to use your walking foot. Because there's very little cushion in these layers, right? But if you're using a higher loft batting, using a walking foot probably will make this process a lot easier, for certain. And we've also glue basted these three pieces together before we even stitch, which is kind of going to help them stay together without using a walking foot as well. Yeah, I'll try to go back, Sherry, and add a link. Let me write that down so I don't forget. Link to satin stitches. Maybe it'll be helpful. I'll try to find that video and put a link down in the description box for you. So that's your homework, everybody. We're doing 91 of them for a wall size quilt that measures roughly 36 inches by 36. It's going to be a square quilt. Each one of your rows is going to have 9 blocks that look just like this, right? 9 blocks. Aren't these fabrics pretty? So there's 4 of mine right there. I need 5 more for this row, but let me show you. I've already done 3 more rows so that you can kind of see an idea of what it's going to look like. Like that. And like that. Yes, these fabrics are gorgeous. Isn't that going to be so pretty? Like that. Ooh, look at this. That speaks my Nana right there. She would have loved that one. So this is going to give you an idea. Isn't that so pretty? And the little template that I was using just helps make sure that my heart is in the same place and arranged exactly the same on each one of my blocks. So you can use that or not, right? It might even be cute to, you know, kind of catacorder your hearts on each one of the blocks differently. That would be cute too, right? It's your quilt. I want you to make it the way you want it. I wanted mine exactly the same on all of my blocks. Who's got time to fold the fabric in half and find the half and find the center or mark the center on 81 pieces? No, that was much faster for me. So this is what it's going to look like. I still have, let's see, 5 more of these blocks to do as my homework. But if you're sewing along with me, you have a little bit of work to do to catch up. Next week, we are going to sew our rows together. Not the whole quilt, but our rows. And what's really cool about a rag quilt is it is so forgiving. We're going to be using a different seam allowance than we normally use when piecing together patchwork. So I'm going to show you that. And the process of joining these blocks is a little bit different. If you've never made a rag quilt before, it's a little bit different than you normally would piece together blocks in a traditional quilt row, right? So that's what we're doing next week. We are sewing together our rows. And then you'll have a week to do that. And then the third week, we're coming back and our rows will be together. We're attaching the rows and snipping all the seams. Easy peasy, right? I say that, but it's a little bit of work, y'all. I'm not gonna lie. It's a small quilt, but even though it's a small quilt, it's still a little bit of work. So I certainly understand if doing this project is coming at a time where you're not ready to do it. I still hope you join us and you just hang out with us. Next week, even if you're not going to make this quilt, we would still love it if you hang out with us. Ooh, Jane said that layout would have made a great placemat. It would have. That's an idea. Well, I can't change now. I've already put together 3/4 of this quilt. For the future. Yeah, placemats. That would have been so pretty. Oh, you just caught the end. Yeah, you can come back on the replay and catch up to where we are. Yes, and if you have questions after the live, just comment down below the video, and I'll try to be as timely as I can in getting back to you. Sometimes it's the same day. Sometimes it's the next day. Sometimes it could be 5 days before I get to it, but I try my best to answer all the questions on my videos. I try my best. Where can I find the cross stitch fabrics? I'm going to show you the names of, okay, so this is 2 different charm packs. And I've done mixed them up. But this is the name of the 2 different charm packs, Baby Jane and Boutique, and they're Moda brand fabrics. So if you Google Baby Jane and Boutique Moda, they might pop up. My good friend Sally sent me these 2 over last summer, I think it was. And I still had them, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to just blend these 2 charm packs together for this project, because even though they're 2 different charm packs, they're really cute together, and the colors just kind of go with each other. So those are the 2 different charm packs that I'm using. Sylvia says, I've always wanted to do a rag quilt. This will be my 4th. If I remember right, this is going to be my 4th one. The other ones were bigger, and just being really honest, let me switch this camera. Just being really honest, my other rag quilts were made with bigger blocks, and so they went together much faster. And in my other rag quilts, I did the quick, so from corner to corner, and that part went by so much faster than doing applique on hearts. But I wanted to change it up a little bit for this quilt. So we're going to change it up a little bit. But yeah, my bigger rag quilts went together pretty quick because I was doing big blocks. Jennifer, I missed your question. So, oh, there you go. I just answered your question. I asked how we can get the cross stitch fabric. There you go. Google Baby Jane Boutique Moda Fabrics, and you might be able to find them. I don't know how long those lines have been out. They were gifted to me. So I don't know if it's something that they're currently making or if it's something that's discontinued. But if you use the Googles, you could probably find them. You're welcome. You're welcome. Amos said this pattern will be new to her. Yay! Yay! Oh, Sally's here. Thank you so much, Sally, for moderating. Sally said they've been out for a couple of years. So I would Google it and see what comes up. Sheila said, how cute would it be to print pictures using printable fabric for the hearts and then make a pillow top? Great for a child leaving home for a grandparent. Oh, that's a good idea. See, y'all are so creative. I love that you share your ideas. That's a really good idea. I like that a lot. Yeah, these fabrics are really cute, right? This one just screams my Nana. My Nana loved polka dots, stripes, red, and navy blue. And when I see something like this, I'm just like, oh, that's like my Nana saying hello. Because it just instantly says Nana, right? I love that one. Cheryl, this is going to be your first rag quilt. Yay! Sylvia said, how many blocks would I need for a rag for a baby quilt? Let me pull that on the screen for you, Miss Sylvia. Here are all the measurements for 4 different size quilts. You need lots of little squares. But for a crib size quilt, you need 260, right? 130 for the front and 130 for the back. And then, of course, you need a batting, like a crib size batting, cut into 4-inch by 4-inch pieces. Lucy just looked to see the Mary Jane, Baby Jane, is available and they are out of stock. You might be able to, if you wanted to find these, you might have to check out some Facebook fabric groups and ask around. Someone might have them and they might be willing to sell them. I don't know. I see that a lot in a lot of the Facebook groups that I belong to, quilting groups, fabric groups. They might have run out of a certain fabric and they'll ask the group, does anybody have any of it? And then they just, you know, buy or trade from each other. Stamperama, this is your first live chat. Yay, I'm so glad you're here. I don't know why I get nervous when someone says this is my first time here. I don't know why that makes me nervous. I wanted to leave this up on the screen for a few minutes. I did show it in the beginning, but I know that a lot of you have come in since we started. So I'm going to leave that on the screen if you want to jot that down with a piece of paper. Debbie said, this is my first rag quilt too. I think you're going to love it. I'm going to tell you what, y'all. Rag quilts are relatively simple. You want to know one of the things, and I'm just going to give you a preview of next week. We don't have to press these seams when we join our pieces. The slowest part of this quilt we're knocking out this week, and that is cutting out our pieces, doing the heart applique. If you want to do that, that's probably the slowest part of this quilt. From here on out, the rest of the quilt goes by so fast. You're going to see that next week. Oh, it goes together so much faster once we get through this first initial block of work, right? This is a good chunk of work, the most time-consuming part. From here on out, the rest of the quilt goes together so quick. You're like, holy cow. Phyllis said, is the same technique used with flannel instead of cotton fabric? Yes. Yes. The only thing that you might find that's going to be different is that when you cut all of your seams, right, at the end, and then you wash your quilt, your seams, the little ragged finished edges between your blocks might look a little bit differently than using cotton, because flannel doesn't rag the same as a cotton fabric does. You could still use it. It's still super cute, but the finished seams throughout your quilt is going to look a little bit different. Flannel versus cotton. Same as if you want to use minky on the back. Same thing. You can use the minky, flannel, fleece, any of those things. But your seams are going to look a little bit different after the ragging process, right? Hello, everybody. I just want to make sure I'm not missing anybody's questions, because it's really easy for me to accidentally miss them. Y'all, I am so excited. After, if I've missed your question, we have a few minutes. After the live today, I get to have my first one-on-one coaching meeting through Patreon, and I am so excited to meet with her. I am looking so forward to that, so I'm kind of excited. Lisa said, is a crib size the size of a lap quilt? I wouldn't say a crib size is the size of a lap quilt. When I think lap quilt, I think of like 50 by 50 inches, somewhere in that neighborhood. Crib size is predominantly like the size that would fit in a crib with maybe a little drape over the sides, right? So the crib size is definitely smaller than what I would consider a lap quilt. When I think lap quilt, I think like 50 by 50 or 60 by 60, somewhere in that range, maybe even 50 by 60. But it's usually a little bit bigger than a crib size quilt. Ooh, Amy, you're going to join in the Rag Quilt. Yay. Well, the PDF is down below. Grab that if you want to use the heart template. It gives you some really basic instructions on how to put this thing together, but we're walking through that part this week, next week, and the week after. So that's going to be 3 videos about this quilt as a series. So even if you don't want to make the quilt, or you, for whatever reason, you're not into rag quilts, I still hope you hang out with us. Phyllis said, would you still need to add batting with flannel? You can, or you can leave it out. I guess it depends on how fluffy you want your quilt to be, right? If you want it a little bit fluffier, add the batting. And if you just want it to be like a cover that's not hot or puffy, you could leave the batting out. Ooh, Dari just got a text from Joanne's with an ad showing Pellon interfacing is 60% off. Yay! Now's the time to stock up, y'all. Bye, Miss Cheryl. Have a great week. Nita said, I have a lot of charm packs and I need to use up, so this will be a great way to use them up. Yes. Well, I don't have a lot of charm packs. These are my last 2 charm packs, and Miss Sally sent them to me. I'm going to take these off the screen now. These are my last 2 charm packs that Sally sent. And yeah, I have one wall in my camper that's the perfect size wall, and it needs a little something. And so this is where this quilt is going to go. It's going to be so cute. Yep. But if you don't have charm packs, y'all, just cut yourself some 5-inch squares. Doing this scrappy using a whole bunch of different colors would be awesome. So if, you know, don't run out and buy charm packs if you don't want to. Cut up what you have. Cut up some of your husband's old shirts and follow along with us. I love going to the thrift store and looking for like button front shirts. All different colors, designs, stripes, whatever, and using those. Sally, I'm trying to downsize my stuff. I'm trying to use up what I have. So, I love you. I'm trying to use up what I have. Ooh, Evelyn, this is going to be your first rag quilt. I'm excited for you. Yes, I'm excited for y'all. Amy, you could use Minky for the back. Here's the thing. Minky is a pain in the tootie to work with. It just is. But doing it the way, I don't know if you came in for the whole thing or not, but glue basting your 3 layers for this process, I think would be helpful for Minky. But Minky, I think you also have to be careful if you're pressing to dry that glue. I think it's kind of heat sensitive, right? So lower the temperature on your iron so that it works with the Minky and you don't melt it. I think it melts, right? If it's too hot. But glue basting, if you can figure out a way, or spray basting, working with Minky will make it a lot easier. Okay, y'all. So that's your homework. 81 squares with Heart Applique, just like this, or 81 squares. If you're not doing the Heart Applique, sew a X right through from corner to corner and quilt those 3 layers together. Our Heart Applique serves as the quilting. You don't want to do that part. Sew a line, corner to corner, 81 pieces, just like that. Hazel said, what is Minky? I have some, but it's in a great big box over there. It's soft, cuddly, fuzzy fabric. Google it. You'll see some examples. But yeah, it's super soft and cuddly. It's not the easiest or the cleanest stuff to work with because it makes a mess when you cut it. But oh, it's so soft. Yeah, Sherry said keep a vacuum close by if you're using Minky. That's for sure. It makes a huge mess. But ooh, it's so cuddly. Becky said, what time are you for the next show? Okay, so this is going to be, I go live every Thursday. It's generally every Thursday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I usually put up a thumbnail a day or two in advance so that you can come to my channel and click a reminder so that if you have things going on, you get reminded of when the live's getting ready to start. But every Thursday, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Lisa, yes, cotton rags more than flannel. Yep. Okay, y'all. I hope you have a fantastic week. If you're just coming in, come back in a few minutes and you can catch the replay. I'd love to hear from y'all down in the comments section. And then all the ways to get in touch with me are in the description box. And if you haven't joined Creative Crew, I'd love to see some of your work over there. You can post pictures. That link is down below as well. Hope you have a fantastic week. I'm so glad we got to hang out today. I missed y'all. Have an awesome week, everybody. Let me find this little button. Okay. All right. Bye, everybody.